there's different routes. And based on our choices determines the path we're going to take, the outcome that we're going to get. And so nothing is etched in direct stone. There's like three to five different routes of any future event, any future road that can be taken.
Well, this is certainly interesting. And the one that said Jesus sat on the Mount of Olives and said to his disciples, and his disciples said to him, "Tell us, what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world?" And running right down through it, Solana.
Doesn't get much more convincing, does it?
Yeah, his first name real close in proximity, and then when you look at all the things he says he's going to do, it might be a coincidence, it might be a fluke, maybe he should sue his parents for giving him a bad name, but I have absolutely no explanation for it. Mathematical people who looked at it when I put it up on the projector screen in my office said the odds were just trillions to one against that being an accident.
And, well, I've worked on codes, and I'll get to the point where I'll just run something to death, into the ground, and the Lord will say, how much more proof do you need? How much more info do you need?
And still, time and events will prove what's right.
And I've never done one on Javier Solana.
Yeah.
I thought tonight, I would probably, after the show, get busy and do one on him. I didn't have time to do it before. I thought it would be kind of neat if I did one and we could compare notes, because we went over your code earlier today.
Yeah.
And so I've never done one on him.
And I'll bet you the people that even made the software I haven't ran it, and even the fellow that introduced it to me probably doesn't know it ran through the Gospels. He was excited when he saw it ran through the book of Revelation and all the significant prophecies in the book of 2 Thessalonians. But when I saw that it ran through all three Gospels on the exact passage, the same prophecy exactly, arranged in the words arranged differently in the Greek, but in the spelling coming down in a straight line in each and every one of them. I thought, this is strange. This is strange.
Well, what I have found,
I don't know. My jury's still out, but I would sure hate to have that stuck up there against me.
That's convincing. I use the Bible Codes Plus software, and I have found that most of the last days events can be found right in Genesis chapter 1.
I've heard that. I've heard the fellow who wrote the book on the. What was interesting, the fellow that wrote the book on the Bible Code,
Michael Drosnin,
said that Drosnin, I think, said that the apocalypse had opened in the fall of 1995. That's kind of interesting because that was when I discovered Solana, was the fall of 1995. However, his second book, he had shown a missile hitting New York in 2004, and of course we know that did not happen.
Well, New York is a rainy day code. If you want to look for a disaster, you can find one heading for New York about any week of the month of any year.
But I don't again. I think there's a lot of misuse of those codes. I think for fortune telling, that's God said don't do it. But I still think that when things happen like that, you just run the name through with a computer, and there it sits right on top of the prophecy.
Yeah. And
as far as I was concerned, it was almost icing on the cake because of everything else I had discovered.
Well, you know what I found right before the show was that in Genesis 24:35, in Javier Solana, my name runs in his code 5 times.
It runs through in Genesis?
Yes.
I've never even checked that out. I've just looked at the...
And so that's the code I'm heading into.
Oh, my. Well, I'm going to have to do that when I hang up also.
Yeah, and look for your name in a code, because then you know...
I don't want to... My name's... I don't want to know it.
You talk about significance when you find yourself with somebody else's name in the last days.
Mm-hmm.
That you've had a calling to do... There's something there. Am I going to I'm picking up the torch and running with it some more and getting the awareness more out there. I don't know what I'm doing. I'll find out.
I'm marked no matter what happens, so I figure I might as well be hung for a horse as for a sheep.
Yeah, and we know we're all protected until the Lord lifts the protection.
Exactly.
And that's just the way it is, and He lets His people know.
Exactly, and so I know when I first found this, I was so frightened. And that was back in 1981, and I had experience in political circles and a political appointed job, and I knew when there was corruption out there, people would play very, very rough. And when I stumbled on this and realized its ramifications, I sat there and just shook, and then all at once the thought came over me, nothing can happen to you until it's ready.
Exactly.
God is ready. There is nothing you can do to stop it, and it's God, not these yokels, you have to account to when you get done. So with that, I've just gone about my business and had perfect peace.
Oh, yeah, I've had all kinds of fun with my websites. I don't know if you've been to the watcherfiles.com.
I've not as much as I'd like to, but I am aware of your website.
That's probably my playground right there. I have some pictures on there that I've always had fun with. The George Bush with the the silly picture I have of him on my site, and the clone one of Hillary Clinton. And, I just have a lot of fun at that.
Right.
And
it's hard to say, but and then there's things that have happened out there, and I think Christians have been a little rough on some people that were trying to become Christians. When people come in and they're baby Christians, you can't expect them to be all perfect the first day. Jane Fonda, married to Ted Turner, very big New Ager, Ted Turner was, and Jane Fonda was in her day too. And I think her conversion was very real and very genuine, and then people were jumping all over her. But I heard that she had gone to an environmental gathering and that they were offering a meditation to the earth, and she stood up and strongly upbraided them and said, "You should be praying to Jesus."
Oh, wow.
But there were so many people that jumped down her, and I just hope that she didn't get discouraged and give it up, because some Christians were taken over by a spirit of self-righteousness. Yeah,
I fight the same ones every day.
Right.
We probably both do.
Right, and we none of us are perfect. It's just we really don't know right now, and we've got to really be gentle with other people while things are getting sorted out.
Christians are probably the meanest and the worst on each other than anybody else.
Lots of times that's true. And then I've seen New Agers, even at a high level, sometimes run from it like they'd seen the devil. And one of the early New Age publishers that I looked at, he published Donald Keyes' book and Norman Cousins' book, Earth at Omega. And he became a Christian and burned his remaining supply of books and told them they'd have to find a new publisher. And the second version wasn't nearly as elegant as the one that he had published, but it's just really, when you see people turn from it, and there was one in Kansas City who was a large, I think, silver mine control instructor, and he sent a letter to all 15,000 of his former students apologizing for deceiving them.
Wow.
And then they'll turn, and there'll be twists and turns in their own Christian walk, and I think we have to be gentle and loving, and because we too could be open to deception.
Yeah, and you know what? We all don't believe the exact same things. Everybody has differences in doctrines.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you have to come out swinging and fighting.
No, we don't have to demonize everybody.
Yeah, you just move on.
All right. And really recognize that we're wrestling against against flesh and blood. And there's times that error has to come out. For example, I think that if there is a large Christian minister who's telling people that he's going to televise the second coming, hey, as far as I'm concerned, this guy probably knows what he's doing. Somebody said, "Do you think he's doing it innocently?" I said, "Hey, you couldn't do that innocently with 6 weeks of Sunday school, let alone 4 years of seminary." That is setting people up for the Antichrist. And at that point, it is not kind to keep your mouth shut. It is kind to open it and warn people who are going to be taken in.
That's what I've been warning for years about them setting up their own ministers in the churches.
Right.
We
said, "And with feigned words through covetousness shall they make merchandise of you."
Yes. 2 years ago, Pat Robertson sat on his 700 Club praising the wonders of the chip and stating that the very chip was not the Mark talked about in the book of Revelation.
Yes, he certainly did, and he's also the one who said when the Bible says every eye shall see him, it means on television.
And he's another one.
He's also the one who fought me tooth and nail on getting the word out on the New Age movement.
I ran his quote on my...
He's been one of my favorite. Your guess as to the Antichrist identity is as good as mine. Your guess as to the false prophet is as good as mine. But after those things all came out, he was one of my favorite contenders for the false prophet.
Well, you know who's really big, even bigger than him, in the codes is Benny Hinn.
You know what? I met Benny Hinn personally, and it was we were both speakers in Kansas City at a Full Gospel Businessmen's Convention. It was September 23rd, 1983. I remember the date because earlier that date I was on the PTL Club and then flew to Kansas City, and they took me to the airport and picking Benny Hinn up, and it was not a large car, it was a nice couple, and his big preoccupation was he had to have a Ramus cologne. And